First of all, it's about authenticity, isn't it? It is about finding what is authentic, and then living into that authenticity. Yeah. And the way I define authenticity is when your inside is reflected on your outside, and your outside is reflected on your inside, and there's no mask. So I think that I'm often asked, why do you think you have success with this population? And I'm convinced that when they meet me, they see who it is that I am, and they feel who it is that I am, and it's very instinctual. It's very spiritual. It's very metaphysical. A lot of words that were in the movement back in the late 60s, early 70s. Our spiritual side, searching for that. So being authentic is what I strive for. No masks, and that's what I try to open up for those that are incarcerated.
So I know you have an extensive theater background, but I don't know if that was your first way of interacting with the prison system. What are the beginnings, the early beginnings? Because I know that it's a program in 3 states right now.
Yeah, it's actually grown because there's been many offshoots. When I started in the early 90s, there were very few arts programs in prison. There were some, absolutely, writing, lots of writing, because writing's easy to do. Pen, paper, write. Some theater, but certainly not very much Shakespeare, if any. And so it was a wide open field. Now, because I believe in giving it away, I'm not. It's when people say, how can I learn what it is that you do? I say, come and walk with us. Yeah. Take whatever you want. Take. There's no charge. There's plenty of work for all of us. So now, Shakespeare Behind Bars, or either a model of it or a sprig of it, is all over the world and continues to grow. I do a lot of workshops and speeches at colleges, universities, because that's the next generation. And there's always a couple of students after they see the documentary and we do the talk back, or after I deliver an address, or after I teach a workshop, that come up and they're really drawn. I'm drawn to this work, and I say, trust that instinct, and I'll help you however I can. I'm available. My email is on my website. So there's no hiding. There's no hiding. We have 4 questions, and the 4th question is, what is your gift to humankind? And I'm sort of in that question. And that's training facilitators, teaching human beings how to create. I stopped using safe because it's impossible to make a place totally safe. So I call it a circle of truth, a circle of trust. That's easier, I think, to not to achieve, but to grapple with. What is a safety of circle? What is a safe circle or a safe place when, prisons? You work in trauma. Prisons traumatize you every day. The moment you go to sleep, all through the night, when you wake up, it's trauma. It's consistent trauma. Then what usually brought you there is related to trauma, childhood trauma, acting out. I think deeply about that with the population that I'm with, and I want to others to do this work, and the only way you can do this work is, how can you create a safe a circle of trust? How can you facilitate that so that the circle works? The circle does the work.
I imagine in a place like a prison, people are actually hungry for that.
First of all, there's such a misconception about prisons in America because we have such a horrible industrial prison complex. We're such a failure at it. And mostly what the media and movies and television and newspapers and put forth is these people who are in prison deserve to be there. They need to be punished. Punishment. They're less concerned about I call it habilitation. A lot of people call it rehabilitation, but it's a false term, because you can rehabilitate your elbow. If you injure your elbow playing tennis, you can rehabilitate it and get it back to perhaps where it was prior to the injury. But how do you rehabilitate a human being who came from trauma, came from poverty and racism and violence and addiction and gangs and absent fathers? A baby is born totally innocent, and they simply become what it is that the world around them is, because that's what they deserve. That's what they observe. And then that's what they mimic. So they're totally innocent. They didn't know. They didn't have a moral or ethical center.
Well,
Their moral or ethical center is different from ours.
it has to do with surviving in the environment that you come into.
Exactly.
Develop those skills that might not support you in other situations as life changes. But the
Right.
skills of survival are not necessarily the same skills that you have in living
No.
a collaborative life.
Right. Or, and there's trauma in every human being's life. It's just what is the degree of it? And the first thing that we become is what we're born into. And it takes someone along the way to enlighten us, or to light a candle inside of us that allows us to begin to see the world differently, because it can be different, because they didn't think it could be different. And so that's the process that I am really interested. It's human transformation. How do you get there? Yes, they are responsible for the crime they committed. It is their job to go back into their past, to dig into their past, to discover where it is that they came from and why it is they did the things that they did. And then to take full responsibility for the crime that they committed, even though they are not the human being they were back then, is still responsible for that. And when they take responsibility for that and they own that, then and only then do they have the opportunity to open themselves to the question, what do I want to be? I'm not the crime. I have responsibility for the crime, but that crime doesn't have to define me. That's the human aha moment that I adore. And why I do the work. And I feel honored to work with the population that I work with, because I know, putting myself into their shoes, I might well have done the same thing. Here's the other thing that I'm doing. I want to make myself non-existent. I don't want the circle to be dependent on me. I create human beings that can do the work on their own and will do the work and go back out into other prisons, start their programs. And that happens with our guys. They go and they gather a group in their housing unit, and they start doing the work. They get out, they go back to their communities. So it is about always, as someone jokingly said, what are you trying to do? Create little Kurts? I said, no. Maybe little bits of myself that are worthy of being used, but I'm trying to create independent human beings.
Yeah.
Who can do the work, because the work is so, no one entity can do it. We all have to do it. So it's the great thing about being a teacher, right?
It is pretty wonderful.
It's an honorable profession.
Thank you so much for your time. I've loved spending this time with you.